There's a lot that goes into a police officer, but in this episode of Mini Talks, it's not my intention to go through everything that a police officer needs to know. Start with basic training. And similar to the military, you'll get an officer that goes off to the academy, and that academy, here at least here in Arkansas, is a basic training academy. That means when you graduate that academy, you're a basic law enforcement officer. When you buy a car, do you consider that the car that you buy just a basic car? It just gets you from A to B, or do you like some luxuries along with that? Do you like tilt steering, automatic windows, cruise control? You start adding on your accessories. So, do you like a basic car? Do you like a basic police officer? Or would you expect somebody coming out of the academy to be more advanced, not just basic? Because the training that you get after the academy is pretty much on your department's time or your officer's time. Sometimes your departments don't have the funding, or they just won't send your officers to get more training. And keep in mind, when you go to the academy, you're not just studying how to be a law enforcement officer. You're studying history of law, case law, current law, changes in law, driving, civil procedures, safety. I mean, there's a whole list of things that you'll be learning. So should we have like academies that are longer with more advanced training, or are you satisfied with just the basic step, the minimum, the lowest bidder? I think we owe it to increase the training and produce a better product. If you buy a car that just gets you from A to B, are you just happy with that? Maybe the car doesn't have power steering, power windows, tilt steering. Should those items be standard on a car? You want the better product. You buy a car, you kind of expect some luxuries to go along with it. Obviously, we're not talking about cars, we're talking about people and training of people, but we're also talking about the protection and serving of people, of citizens. But the biggest issue today is like weapons, use of force, things in that nature. If you're looking for case law that these things are built upon, refer to Tennessee versus Garner and Graham versus Connor. That's going to give you some insight to some of the foundations of use of force in law enforcement. But get into the use of force continuum. It all starts verbal. I mean, it's something that I teach in self-defense class is, your voice is your first line of defense. It can be considered a weapon. The officer's going to give commands. If you're dealing with certain people, they're going to be passive resistance. And when they, telling you what they're not going to do, telling you what they're going to do, and there's verbal resistance. It's passive. But that's where the resistance starts. Then we move on to soft hands and versus hard hands. You're going to have soft hands first, which that basically means just like open palm, things that you grip. We can talk about hard hands may actually include something like a fist, something like a small joint manipulation. Strikes are going to be involved. We can move on to the next level. Involves tasers, mace. Weapons have changed over the years. I won't go into all the specific ones. Next level comes up is baton. Then we have lethal, which in that continuum you're allowed to go one step above in order to do your job. Another thing in Arkansas law, I know it's written that you can use verbal threats in order to get compliance. And that starts at the bottom level, at the verbal stage. We'll jump back up to lethal, because using lethal force, you have to be justified in 3 areas. You'll see a lot of people talk about the fear. That's kind of an old thing that was kind of existed way before I went to the academy. 2 out of these 3 things need to be prevalent before you can use lethal force. Number 1 is jeopardy. Number 2, ability. Number 3 is opportunity. The most likeliest combination is the ability and opportunity. And what those mean, jeopardy, ability, and opportunity, mean death or serious physical injury. If somebody has the ability to cause death or serious physical injury, or they have the opportunity to cause death or serious physical injury, you can use lethal force. And as time moved on, training has gotten better, and it really needed improvement in the verbal area and the soft and hard hands area, where it used to be they're just trained in pressure point control tactics. Some of your states have adopted the Blower system, Gracie systems, which I'm a big fan of. And if you know me, you know that I have trained for a long time, and it's something that really helped me along to fill in the gap to where you can be effective in those areas, to where you don't have to escalate to a higher use of force. But it just doesn't take physical abilities. It also takes mental abilities just to be aware of certain situations. So it's something that has to be ongoing. It's not something that you're just going to sit down and learn in an hour or 2 hours. It's something that you have to dedicate yourself to. And you have to keep practicing. But you see a pattern, and this is with people that just like firearms just as well. People like to go out and shoot. Officers like to go out and shoot. It's part of training. But it's kind of the easiest part to do, because when you go do that stuff, nobody's shooting back at you. You can simulate it, but it's not, it's not real. It's always a simulation. When you train in self-defense, hands-on, you can get real with that stuff, especially in the area of jiu-jitsu. It's real training. It's the truth. You can go 100% if you want. You can go 50% if you want to. You have a lesser chance of sustaining injuries. But it's also something that takes physical abilities, which there can be a big variance of physical abilities from one person to the next. And there's realities that people have to face inside their minds with their ego. They find out who they really are when it comes down to the use of force. Requiring jiu-jitsu and officers training is something that I've talked about with my training partners, my coaches, and them just as well. Some of them are law enforcement, and some of them aren't. But it's something that I think should be required. It's something that I actually sent emails and things about to our government here in Arkansas. Hadn't got a response on anything. We have a committee that wants to progress things along and improve in certain areas. So I encourage anybody out there that's listening, or go tell someone, send an email, write a letter. The bigger word we can get out, maybe we get those changes. Because when you get more training in something like this, you have benefits that go along with more training. You get people that are smarter, more confident, more responsibility, more accountability. Because if you're not trained in one area, then it's just lack of training. It can be a fallback excuse, and you're gonna get a reaction from the situation instead of being proactive and getting out in front of a situation. And if you're not quite familiar with what I'm talking about on jiu-jitsu, go back and refer to one of my previous Mega Talks episodes where I speak with Brian Wilson about the origins of jiu-jitsu, and we talk about what jiu-jitsu is, where it came from, because I think a lot of people watch, MMA fights, UFC, and they think that's what jiu-jitsu is, when jiu-jitsu is actually more than that. I believe in making a stronger frame for all training is going to build a more well-rounded police officer. But before I get out of here, let me give you some history. This is some Arkansas history going back to the year around 1982. I was pretty young then, and I remember Sheriff Tommy Robinson. If you're not familiar with him, he was sheriff of Pulaski County, and he adopted the shoot to kill. And I remember seeing that on the news and being surprised about, officers shooting to kill, or deputies rather, shooting to kill. He done a lot of different types of things that was unique at the time, but the shoot to kill came from a rash of robberies. I believe they had a lot of robberies taking place in Pulaski County at the time, and he wanted to put a deputy in with a shotgun in the back room of a lot of these businesses that were getting robbed continuously. And he didn't want to violate the criminals' rights, their constitutional rights. So he said he would put a sign up at all the front doors of the businesses, that they were going to protect their property with lethal force. And he would rotate those deputies around to the different businesses and have them basically hide in the back store. So if they got robbed, the deputy's intent was to come out and shoot to kill them. That was their way of deterring the robberies at the time. So it's just a little bit of history lesson coming straight out of Arkansas. If you want to look that up, you get some different articles, some stories floating around. I don't know, the internet. We all know the internet is just full of good information. If you know some people that were living at those times or around in that area, just go talk to them. I'm sure they remember. So I'm going to get out of here and leave you with that info. Think about those things. Take some action, and I'll talk to you next time here on Mini Talks.